Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. Today's podcast is a follow-up Q&A to the previous podcast about narcissistic Ruqyah practitioners and magicians. So see it like a part 2. I received so many questions after the last podcast, so I believe you'll find them really interesting and you'll also find the answers interesting. So do listen to the end. And please excuse my weird voice today. I've come down with a cold, so do bear with me. And as always, before I jump in, please do like the podcast if you find it helpful. Do share it with people whom you feel could benefit from this information. And do subscribe to the channel or sign up to the newsletter on the website to be notified of when I release new podcasts and other news. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, you can find a link below to submit an application form, or you can email me directly. My email is also below in the description box. So, the first question is, why do I see my deceased father appear at my home a lot? Well, like I said in my previous podcast, the ghosts that people see in this world are the qareens of the deceased. You're not seeing the deceased person's spirit. And we know this because the Prophet ﷺ taught us that once someone leaves this world after death, they are cut off from it. So your nafs will travel to the barzakh, which is the waiting area before the Day of Judgment. Okay, and we know this because it's the nafs that will be held to account by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Muddathir, verse 38, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ رَهِينَةٌ. Every nafs for what it has earned will be retained and held to account. We don't know what will happen to the soul. We just know that that's where the nafs goes. And the qareen doesn't go with the nafs. The qareen stays behind in the dunya because the qareen hasn't experienced death yet. So the jinn can live for thousands of years. And that's why they don't experience death when we do. They are a separate entity from us, and they will have their own accounting. And this is why when a human being dies, the evil jinn has to go and fulfill another mission. And because your qareen knows you better than anyone in this world, it's used by magicians and the Dajjal too to be able to give the illusion that the dead have either been resurrected or that the dead have come back into this world, and it's to cause confusion about what we're taught in Islam about the barzakh. So if someone's qareen can give you the illusion that someone who is deceased can come back into this world, then it will make you doubt what you learn in Islam about life after death. And this is why so many qareens go and work with fortune tellers and tarot readers and mediums who claim to communicate with the dead. And it's also meant to scare you. So these evil people want you to believe that you can get haunted by the ghosts of deceased people. And this isn't true, because what you see are evil spirits. And when people do their rituals to summon ghosts, or they go looking for ghosts, you're summoning the jinn. That's all that's happening. When you see all of these movies about, ghosts and dead people, these are all jinn. And not any jinn, the bad jinn. Okay, the evil jinn who want to mess with your head and give you mental health issues. They want you to live in paranoia and fear of ghosts. Okay, some people get so scared when they see an evil spirit that they won't even leave the house because they're so terrified of seeing more ghosts or seeing the ghosts of people that they didn't like who are now deceased. And you just have to read your adhkar. Okay, play Surah Al-Baqarah in the house if you do see an evil spirit, especially one who looks like someone you used to know who's deceased, and do your best to sleep with wudu on if you have bad nightmares or if you see evil spirits in the house. Okay, when you have wudu, when you sleep, it protects you from sleep paralysis and other spiritual afflictions like that. So this is what a lot of qareens do after your death. And like I said before, there are some who will repent and they will become believers, but the majority of them will work with fortune tellers and magicians and so on. And they may come into your dreams after Fajr time in the form of someone deceased, and they will give you bad news. So for example, they might say to you that they're being tortured or they're in hellfire, and it will give you so much distress. Don't take these seriously. Okay, I'm going to do a separate podcast, inshallah, about dreams. But this is again what the evil qareen will do, because you will hear the voice of the deceased in the dream. You will see them exactly as they were, and everything will be very familiar to you. So they're just there to mess with your head. This is why adhkar are so important. Because if you keep believing these dreams, they will affect you and your mental health, and you could fall into depression, and you can have constant anxiety from what you keep seeing in your dreams. Okay, you have to read Ayatul Kursi at least before you go to sleep, every single night. Now, if you have a dream before Fajr of a deceased person in distress, then what it could mean is that this person is in need of your dua or your sadaqah. So give charity on their behalf, and it will reach them, inshallah. And if they are going through any punishment because of major sins that they never repented from, then the punishment will lessen for them as a result of the charity you gave for them. Okay? Now, there will be many qareens of deceased people who will work with the Dajjal, and they will help him give the illusion that he can bring the dead back to life. There's a very long hadith that was narrated by Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu about the Dajjal, and he said that the Prophet ﷺ addressed the Sahaba about the many tricks and deceptions of the Dajjal, and one of them was his ability to deceive people into believing that he could bring the dead back to life, and he does this using the service of the evil jinn. So as we know, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the true ability to resurrect the dead and give them new life. So if the Dajjal manages to deceive people into believing that he is God by doing this, then he would have served his purpose in misguiding so many people into shirk. So the Dajjal is going to be the most powerful magician who will ever walk this planet. And he will only be powerful because he will have armies and armies of evil jinn who will work for him. They will help him with his bizarre magic tricks, because the evil jinn will always partner with evil humans in kufr, because they all worship Iblis. So they unite against the believers, and this is what makes magicians kuffar. Okay, so if you're someone who dabbles in magic or you create magic spells, you are no longer Muslim. You have become a kafir, and you have joined the forces of the Dajjal and his armies in worship of Iblis. So in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, وَإِنَّ مِنْ فِتْنَتِهِ أَنْ يَقُولَ الْأَعْرَابِي أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ بَعَثْتُ لَكَ أَبَاكَ وَأُمَّكَ أَتَشْهَدُ أَنِّي رَبُّكَ فَيَقُولُ نَعَمْ. So one of the trials and the fitna of the Dajjal is given in an example of a Bedouin who is approached by him. And the Dajjal says to him, if I resurrect your father and mother from the dead, will you bear witness that I am your Lord? And the Bedouin will say, yes. فيتمثل له شيطانان في صورة أبيه وأمه فيقولان يا بني اتبعه فإنه ربك. Then 2 devils from the jinn will appear to him in the form of his father and mother, and they will say to him, O our son, follow him, for he is indeed your Lord. And the hadith continues, وَإِنَّ مِنْ فِتْنَتِهِ أَنْ يُسَلِّطْ عَلَى نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ فَيَقْتُلَهَا وَيَنْشُرَهَا بِالْمِنْشَارِ حَتَّى يُلْقَى شِقَّتَيْن ثُمَّ يَقُولُ انظُرُوا إِلَى عَبْدِي هَذَا فإني أبعثه الآن ثم يزعم أن له ربا غيري. And another part of his fitna will be that he will overpower a human and kill him. Then he will cut him with a saw until he falls apart in 2 pieces. Then he will say to the people, "Look at this slave of mine. I will resurrect him now, only for him to claim that he has a Lord other than me." فيبعثه الله ويقول له الخبيث من ربك؟ فيقول ربي الله وأنت عدو الله أنت الدجال والله ما كنت بعد أشد بصيرة بك مني اليوم. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect him, and the Dajjal will say to him, "Who is your Lord?" And he will say, "Allah is my Lord, and you are the enemy of Allah, you are the Dajjal. By Allah, I have never had more insight about you than I have today." وَإِنَّ مِنْ فِتْنَتِهِ أَنْ يَأْمُرَ السَّمَاءَ أَنْ تُمْطِرَ فَتُمْطِرَ وَيَأْمُرَ الْأَرْضَ أَنْ تُنْبِتَ فَتُنْبِتَ. And another part of his fitna will be that he will command the sky to rain, and it will rain, and he will command the earth to bring forth vegetation, and it will do so. So this hadith explains many magic tricks that the Dajjal will do later, and people will fall for these tricks. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Taha, verse 69, وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُ حَيْثُ أَتَى. And magicians will never succeed wherever they go. So the Dajjal will only be a test, like all other magicians are tests for us. This would explain to you how they can do certain magic tricks on stage that are very difficult for the human brain to comprehend, because they request the services of the evil jinn to help them do things that are considered to be amazing, right? So you really have to be careful when watching or attending magic shows, because you are in the energy field of evil people and evil jinn. These people are entertaining you with forces that you can't see that will affect you. And if they don't affect you spiritually, they will affect your iman. Okay, because you will start to wonder, how does the human being have the capability to do all of these things? And that's how the Dajjal will misguide so many people who will fall into shirk. So if you're seeing ghosts of deceased people, you are in a magic trick. Okay, you are being deluded by forces that you can't see, because they want to misguide you and they want to give you spiritual and mental health problems. So if you're unfortunate enough to see something like that, just say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, read your adhkar, play Surah Al-Baqarah, and you'll be fine, inshallah. Now the next question is, what makes people vulnerable or susceptible to being afflicted with black magic? So there are different answers here, but the first obvious one is being a disbeliever. Because when you're a disbeliever, you don't know how to use the Quran to protect you. You're not a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power to protect you from Iblis and his soldiers. So non-believers are going to be afflicted by all sorts of jinn problems, as we can see in the world we live in, right? Everything's turning upside down because non-Muslims have so many different spiritual issues. And these issues come from the way they live. They don't live, in accordance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. So when they're committing zina, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, all that kind of stuff, they're leaving their spiritual portals open for the evil jinn to enter. So you'll see that so many of them are, for example, affected by the ashiq jinn. And if someone has sent black magic to them or done a spell on them, then they are the most affected because they have no spiritual protection at all. Now, other people who are affected can be those who are unhygienic. Okay, if you don't wash, if you don't take care of your bodies, then this can invite evil spirits to come into your energy field because you're going to be in a state of impurity. And that's why it's an obligation for us to perform ghusl after a menstrual cycle is over, after the 40 days after giving birth are over, and after sexual intercourse. Okay, because you're in a state of janaba or impurity and you can't pray when you're in that state. So if you do not perform ghusl, and let's say you continue praying or you continue about your day or about your week and you haven't had a proper shower, there are loads of people who don't do that, by the way. You are inviting the evil jinn to come to you. So if you're in a state of impurity, you're at risk. Now, if you are in a state of impurity because of your menstrual cycle, right, during that time you can't pray, you can still perform ruqyah and read your adhkar. The only things you are prohibited from doing are sexual intercourse, praying, touching the Quran, and fasting. So if you are verbally reciting the Quran or your adhkar and so on, then it's absolutely fine. It doesn't stop you from doing that. It's more of a problem if you are unhygienic because you don't do your ghusl after your menstrual cycle ends. You have to do that to protect yourself from black magic and evil spirits. And this is a huge mistake a lot of non-Muslims make as well. After they have sexual intercourse with their partners or whoever, they don't perform ghusl after. In many cases, they just pull up their jeans and just get on with the rest of their day. This leaves them susceptible to evil spirits coming towards them because evil spirits like unhygienic environments and people and so on. It's really important for you to know that. Other reasons will be that you're not performing your prayers consistently. You're not reading your adhkar. You are committing major sins regularly. Evil spirits love to be in the company of people who disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you are engaging in major sins or really bad habits regularly, like watching pornography, for example, or smoking drugs, then know that the evil jinn like to be in your company. And believe me, you wouldn't like to know how many would be sitting there with you. Sometimes it's hundreds and sometimes it's thousands. And then you wonder why you struggle to get up for Fajr prayer, or you struggle to pray, or you struggle to do anything that's good because you have such fatigue and laziness and you procrastinate so much. It's from all their heavy energy on you because they love the environments that you are inviting them into. It's that simple. Another reason would be that you have a very low level of nafs, which means you are a narcissist or you're a psychopath or even a toxic codependent. Okay, if your iman is low, then your level of nafs will be low. You will fall into the category of an-nafs al-ammara bis-su'. When you are in this low level of nafs, again, your portal is open for all evil jinns to enter. So not only will you be susceptible to black magic, you'll also naturally attract the evil jinns of the people whom you interact with, because all your relationships are toxic. Okay, so there'll be transference of evil jinn between all of you, especially via sexual intercourse. I like to call them sexually transmitted demons. Okay, you've got to be careful. If you want to elevate your nafs, you have to get out of bad environments and toxic relationships. And the final reason I'll give you for people, to be susceptible to black magic is that they keep the company of people who do black magic, or they follow a cult where the sheikh is known to be a magician. He uses the jinn in his work and so on. If you are around people who do black magic and they do things like card reading, fortune telling, or they go to people who do card readings and fortune telling, then you are at risk of having a spell put on you by someone you know. Okay? I know it's difficult sometimes when they are your family members and they're unavoidable, but it's just more of a reason to increase your adhkar. But if you know people who go to dodgy sheikhs and ruqyah practitioners and they've done spells on people out of revenge, or they have gone many times to fortune tellers, you're at risk. You're at risk of being a victim of a spell from someone who has no fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They might think it's okay. They might think it's totally fine. I came across a brother who said to me that he discovered in his mid-40s that his own mother did black magic on him, so he never marries, because she's always wanted him to herself. And his mother thought it was absolutely fine to do that. She didn't see anything wrong with that. But what I found really interesting about his story is that he has a brother, and this brother also had black magic done to him by his mother, but he went on to get married and have children and didn't suffer in the way this man did. And long story short, it was because the other brother was practicing and he wasn't. So his group of friends were non-Muslims. He said, I wasn't into praying, fasting or anything. He didn't have a practicing Muslim father as a role model. And because his mother was a single mother, she wanted the boys to herself. She worried about what would happen to her in old age if they were to get married and move away. So she went to a magician and got a spell put on them. The other brother, however, he had a group of very practicing Muslim friends. So he grew up, learning how to pray and read adhkar and do his ruqyah and all of that. So he wasn't affected by the magic she put on him. So even when black magic is done with an intention that isn't as evil as others, or evil at all, okay? Let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she didn't intend to ruin their lives. She was more worried about what would happen to her in old age. It will still affect them negatively because she went to a magician. The magician's work will always backfire on him and the people who go to him or her for magic spells. So her intention was to keep her eldest son with her, but what happened is the magic backfired when he found out about it, and now he wants nothing to do with her. He doesn't want to speak to her at all. He's so angry and upset with her. So she lost her son that way, through magic. And it backfired on her when she did the magic on the younger son, because he went on to get married and have children, and he's busy with his life now. So she lost in both cases. Magic never works. Even if it looks like it does in the beginning, it will always come round like a boomerang and hit you in the face. And there's no recovery from that because it's hard and it's painful and you're left with nothing. And do you know when it hits them the most? When the spell is broken. Okay, when the magician's spell is broken with Ruqyah, or someone undoes the knots in the sihr, or the taweez, or the sihr is destroyed completely. Oh, it's a very dark day for them. Because when the spell is broken, the evil jinn go after them because they're angry. And you'll notice with people who do black magic or who go to people with black magic, they are always dark in their energy and they are always anxious because when spells are broken, they get returned to sender. And the evil jinns who have done this work for the magicians are not happy because they've been burnt by the ruqyah. They've been hurt by adhkar. So who do they take this up with? They take it up with the magician. And how does the magician solve this problem? He renews the magic. Okay, he sends them again to the same person. So sometimes black magic is renewed because the magician is getting attacked. Or the person who went to the magician for the spell is getting attacked and they want the magician to do something about it. So the magician asks for more payment to renew the black magic. And that's why some people find themselves in a long cycle of being in and out of ruqyah because they just recover from possession and then they get afflicted with the jinn again. And it's long term. There's something that you're not doing right in your ruqyah if that's the case. Or maybe you're just so happy after the jinn has left and the black magic is broken that you forget to do your adhkar and your salah after that. You slip into old habits. The black magic can be renewed if you are susceptible to it. So you've got to be careful from that because so much black magic gets renewed as a result of them being attacked by the evil jinn. And if a magician even tries to do black magic or send a spell to a high-level empath who has a very strong connection with Allah, they have a lot of light, they read their adhkar, they protect themselves with salah, and they're, generally very good practicing Muslims, the magic will get sent back to the magician tenfold. And it burns the magician so badly, that's why they really hate high-level empaths, because they simply can't defeat them. And even when they try to, they get hurt. They send their strongest jinn to break the high-level empath, and when the strongest jinn gets brutally defeated by the angels who protect the high-level empath, the magician gets it from that jinn, because it's a humiliation for the jinn. Like, how dare you send me to be humiliated like this by a devout worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is protected by very strong angels because of their adhkar. And it's their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that allows their nafs to elevate so high until they become out of reach of the evil jinn and these magicians and evil people in general. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the example of the Prophet ﷺ being afflicted by black magic because he wanted to show us that even the best of people can be afflicted with these spells if they do not know the adhkar or read the adhkar and all of this. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't know how to protect himself until that point when Jibreel came to read over him. And you'll notice that there were no other narrations after that one that stated that the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted by black magic again. So, to put it simply, high-level Muslim empaths are every magician's worst nightmare. So, moving on to the next question, someone asked about the correct timing of Ruqyah and if wudu is needed. I would always recommend that you do wudu when performing Ruqyah because evil spirits don't like it when you're clean. Like I said, they prefer people who aren't washed and they're unhygienic. So for the Ruqyah to be effective, it helps to have wudu. And in regards to timing, I would recommend that you perform Ruqyah and make your dua during peak times of answered dua, like tahajjud time or on Fridays. Because essentially you are turning to Allah in dua. So it makes sense to seek out the holy and special times when the dua is more likely to be answered quickly. Because you're going to be in a state of desperation to get rid of this black magic and any jinn that has overpowered you. Now the next question is, what is the best and most effective way of doing Ruqyah for children? So if a child has been afflicted by black magic or even a very strong evil eye, then do for them what you would do for yourself, which is read the adhkar into a water bottle. You can make your own Ruqyah water. You read Surah Al-Baqarah or the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, and then you make sincere dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you shifa. And you do this with full conviction, fully believing that it's going to work. And then you just let the child drink from that water bottle all day and try and repeat it for 7 days until the symptoms go away. So like I mentioned before, the symptoms could be nausea, throwing up, sweating, going to the toilet more often, sneezing a lot, fever. Whatever the symptoms are, these are good. Let all the toxins come out, because this means that the black magic is coming out, and so is the evil jinn, inshallah, because it won't be able to tolerate living in a body where there is Ruqyah water, so it will be forced to leave. Okay? Now, if the children are old enough to know Ayatul Kursi by heart, Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Ikhlas, An-Nas, Al-Falaq, then get them to do their own Ruqyah water. Teach them how to do their own adhkar and their own Ruqyah whenever they don't feel well. You will empower them by teaching them this from a very early age. And then teach them how to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and rely on Him only for shifa from any illness, any affliction, and anything that doesn't make them feel good. and their ruqyah will be just as powerful as the one that you do for them. So try and get them to independently do their own as soon as they are old enough and capable of doing so. Now, I know that we learn from the Sunnah that it's best to destroy the magic that's been done on you, especially if your DNA has been used in it. But in many cases, you have no idea where the sihr is, right? You have no idea where it's been buried, where it's been thrown, where it's been hidden. And this is why I recommended that you listen to Surah Al-Baqarah while you sleep for 7 days in a row with the intention that you see a dream. And I learnt this from a sheikh in Saudi. And what will happen is that if Allah wants to reveal the place of where the sihr is hidden, He will give you a vivid dream in those days. If nothing is revealed to you, then what you need to do is you need to make a sincere dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He sends one of His soldiers to do the job for you and destroy the sihr. And what will happen, subhanallah, is an angel will do it, a good jinn will do it, a human passerby will do it, a bird will do it, or an animal will do it. I've posted 2 links to 2 videos below of magic being found by a dog and a human diver who went on to destroy the sihr. And in that moment, someone, somewhere in the world felt instant relief from the magic being destroyed, subhanallah. I find it amazing, it's mind-blowing for me. So never underestimate the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and don't be disappointed if you don't see a dream in the 7 days. Sometimes Allah knows that the sihr is out of your reach. You wouldn't be able to find it. Perhaps it's in another country, or it's at the bottom of the ocean, and Allah will request a whale to bring it up to the surface so that the waves can take it to the shore for a passerby to pick up and destroy. Or perhaps it's buried deep underground somewhere, and a good jinn will be requested to bring it up and destroy it. Or perhaps it's in a building that gets burned down and the sihr gets destroyed with it. You'd never know. Just make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends someone to take care of it. And He absolutely will. Someone said to me that they feel so sad that they were afflicted by black magic because it ruined their life, and they said for many years they experienced insanity. And when someone experiences this, they act in very strange ways. They can't function properly as human beings. They can't use their brain properly. They will do erratic things and unusual things that make people scared of them, or it causes people to make fun of them and laugh at them. So the Prophet ﷺ was asked about what happens to people like this, because they are acting out in ways that's now out of their control, because the jinn that has been sent to them has taken over the way they behave. And that's what the spell is about. Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, رفع القلم عن 3 عن النائم حتى يستيقظ وعن الصبي حتى يشب وعن المعتوه حتى يعقل. The pen is lifted from 3 people: a sleeping person until he awakens, a child until he becomes an adult, and an insane person until he regains his sanity. So if someone sleepwalks, for example, and they do things or commit sins while they're in a state of sleep, the angel on your shoulder who writes your bad deeds lifts the pen. So nothing is written, because it's out of your control when you're sleeping. And the same applies to someone who misses their prayer because they were sleeping. So let's say someone falls into a very deep sleep. They are so tired from traveling, and they wake up after Isha and realize that they missed Asr and Maghrib. The angel does not write this down as a sin, because it was out of your control that you missed those prayers because of the deep sleep you were in. And if we go to the child until he becomes an adult, no one is accountable for their sins until they reach the age of puberty. So if a child dies before the age of puberty, they go straight to paradise. The accounting starts from the time you reach that age, because you now know right from wrong and you are responsible for what you do. And it's also the time when your qareen wakes up, because he now knows that you will be accountable for your sins, so he tries to push you into committing them. Because when you're a child, you're still learning right from wrong, so you're not accountable. But when you know right from wrong, that's when it becomes a problem, when you decide to follow what your qareen is telling you to do via the waswas. And then the third person is the insane person until he regains his sanity. So when you are in a state of being insane, you can't use your brain to think properly. So the pen is lifted on everything you do during that time. So let's say someone insane behaves erratically. They might lash out at people, they might be abusive, they might be very difficult, they might not pray at all, they might not fast Ramadan. You know, when you're in a state of insanity, you're not using your brain because you can't. And if black magic has been sent to you to stop your brain from functioning properly so that you act like a crazy person, then you will not be accountable for anything that happens in that time. So let's say someone has been afflicted with this type of spell for 20 years. Can you see now how it's actually a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that 20 years worth of sins and behavior and, not praying will not be accounted for? And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensates those who have been afflicted with so much black magic that it stops them from praying, it stops them from functioning normally, it stops them from having a normal life or differentiating between right and wrong. So you will find that people who die while in a state of being insane will skip the questions in the grave, they will skip everything on the Day of Judgment, and they'll go straight to paradise. There is no hisab for that person. And if someone did regain their sanity in this world before they died, on the Day of Judgment they will see that there's a big gap in their accounting, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only hold you to account for the things that you did while you had a functioning brain. Okay, so you'll notice that when you open your book, there will be blank pages because the pen was lifted during those times. And you'll also get golden tickets on that day because of the trust you had in Allah, the Ruqyah you did, and the patience that you practiced because of the black magic that came to you. So you'll find golden tickets that might upgrade your level of paradise. Okay, so don't be upset if it happened to you or if you've seen it happen to someone else, especially if that person is a good person. Because Shu'aib radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله خير وليس ذاك لأحد إلا للمؤمن إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. Wonderful is the affair of the believer, for there is good for him in every matter, and this is not the case with anyone except for the believer. If he is happy, then he thanks Allah, and thus there is good for him in that. And if he is harmed by anything, then he shows patience, and in that there is good for him too. So, of course, this applies to men and women, but it's important to know that there was khair in it. It happened to you for a reason, and perhaps that reason is so that your level of paradise can get upgraded on the Day of Judgment, or that you have so many sins wiped out from your account, so that you have a very short and swift account with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unlike a lot of other people. So don't see it as something that's ruined your life. This life, in comparison to the hereafter, is as short as the blink of an eye. Okay? Now, other people have asked, what happens to those who suffered from mental health problems on the Day of Judgment? Will they get pardoned too? So the general rule is, if you had a functioning brain, you know right from wrong, then you will be held to account for everything you did. So let's say someone experienced a very deep depression, or they suffered from so much anxiety because of heavy waswas, Or let's say they were suffering from Jinn, sleep paralysis and things like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expect you to deal with them in accordance to the Quran and Sunnah. So again, we go back to adhkar and ruqyah and reading the Quran and staying away from major sins, staying away from bad people and bad environments, leaving toxic relationships, and so on, because it's usually all of these things that are causing the depression and fueling the waswas. And perhaps it's your addictions and bad habits that you are not making enough effort to quit that are inviting, other jinns into your life, like the Ashiq jinn. And it's these jinns who mess with your emotions and your hormones and your outlook on life and relationships and the opposite sex and so on. So a lot of people are suffering from depression because they don't have enough self-discipline when it comes to dealing with their issues. And some people are depressed and upset because they are grieving, for example, the loss of a loved one. So they could be going through a divorce, a heartbreak, they could be grieving the death of a loved one and so on. But Islam has given us ways of dealing with grief and dealing with anxiety and depression. So if we are not turning to Islam for answers, then that becomes a decision we make. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is that we turn to the wrong people or the wrong things and we develop addictions, or we turn to non-Muslim advice and medication, and all of this makes us worse. And everyone will face the consequence of not following what the Prophet ﷺ told us to do about grief and depression and everything. Okay, there are answers in Islam for everything. The first one will be to change your environment and to learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at Allah in a different way. Look at Him as, a God who's merciful and loving, and He doesn't put you through something that you can't handle, and that perhaps there's a lesson in there for you. Perhaps He wants to bring you back to Him through this grief, through this depression, and so on. Okay, it's not a punishment. So how you choose to deal with your mental health problems is what you'll be accountable for on the Day of Judgment. Because alhamdulillah, you still have a functioning brain to decide what's good for you and what's not good for you. You know that if you start smoking or taking drugs, it's going to, take you down a very long slippery slope. So if you make that decision to take drugs as a way of coping with your problems, it will be written in your book of deeds. And if you have that option, but you decide not to take it, then that will be written as a good deed for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for not taking that path or making that decision. And alhamdulillah, we live in a time where there's so much help available. So you can get counselling, therapy, psychotherapy. You can go to Islamic lectures where there's plenty of education about how to do ruqyah, how to protect yourself, how to live as a practicing Muslim and overcome mental health problems. And alhamdulillah, there is an increase now of Muslim therapists, and I recommend that you book with them instead of non-Muslim therapists because they can understand your culture and Islam. So it's important that you choose a therapist who has correct aqidah, because if they don't, they can actually misguide you with incorrect information about Islam. So that would be my advice to you before booking any therapy sessions with any Muslim. Just check that they follow the correct understanding of Islam, because if they don't, they could actually fuel your mental health problems and you'll have even more faith issues. Or perhaps you will take their advice and it'll be the wrong advice. So it's really important that their understanding of Islam is correct. So for example, you don't want to go to someone who's red pill, because misogyny is injected into their advice and interpretation of Islamic texts. And you don't want to go to someone who is very feminist either, because their own culture and their own understanding of Islam will be tainted by feminist views that are not in line with Islamic principles. So it goes for any therapist. Assess their character, their message, their goals, their aqidah, to see if they are a good fit for you. And of course, we have rehab centres too that help people deal with their addictions. So don't be stubborn like Amy Winehouse when they tried to make her go to rehab for her drug issues, and she said no. There's plenty of help out there for you. Just take what's on offer and you'll build your iman gradually until you stand on your feet as a strong believer, and you'll get to a point, inshallah, where the Quran and your adhkar and your ruqyah will be everything you need, inshallah, to feel a lot better and get you out of depression and all other mental health problems and hardships. Okay, these will help you to overcome your hardships, but take the help that's on offer, because it really does help just talking to someone about what you're going through and to be reminded about the divine decree and the lessons and the gems that you could take away from everything you go through to elevate your nafs and become a much better person, inshallah. Now, the next question is, will someone be attacked by the jinn if they read the verses of Ruqyah on the sick? And the answer is no, because you are just reading Quran over them out of hope that their condition will get better and that they will recover. However, what the Raqi does is he summons the jinn out of the body. So he might put his hand on the patient's head and summon the demon out. So he's dealing with the jinn directly here. If he's a narc Raqi, he might put his hand somewhere else and pretend to summon the jinn. So if you want to read on someone, don't summon the demon because you might not like what you hear or what you see. Okay, sometimes the demon will start talking to you, shouting at you, raging at you, and you'll get traumatized by that because it will start communicating through the body of the person who is possessed, and they start raging and acting in a very strange way. So don't do that. And I know some people, without even reading any Quran on someone, have experienced someone's jinn communicating with them. And you'll know it's the jinn because sometimes the accent will change, the pitch will change, the language will change. It's just not them. You know it's not them. So there's no harm in you reading over anyone. But I always recommend that before you read on someone who is afflicted with possession or black magic, that you read your own adhkar first, just in case. Because the ruqyah will always affect any demon that's possessed somebody. And you'll notice that perhaps when you read over someone, their leg will start twitching, or their arm will move, or their head will move in a strange way. It's because the demon's getting irritated, but don't worry about that. As long as you're not summoning the demon, keep reading the Quran, because the demon is actually trying to find a way out of the body. And that's why you see different parts acting strangely and independently from one another. And sometimes the demon will leave from a toe or a finger. And I have noticed that a few times when I've read over people. The jinn does go into a panic and desperately tries to find the way out. So there's nothing to be scared of. Just know that you're dealing with something that you also need protection from before you give ruqyah to someone else. Because a jinn can jump into someone else after leaving someone's body. So if you're not protected, you're going to be at risk of that. And this is why being a raqi for work as a career is not appealing, and it's not something that's in line with Islamic principles, because you're going to be dealing with hundreds if not thousands of jinn. So people might think that they are doing, an act of humanitarian service to help people with their jinn problems. However, you're not only putting your life at risk, you are putting the lives of your family members at risk, because the jinn will come after them as well. So it doesn't make sense as a qawwam, as a man who has the responsibility of taking care of his family, to go into a line of work like this, knowing very well that the jinn will come after you if you keep summoning them from the bodies of people, because they don't want to leave, but you are forcing them out. So they will come after you in anger if you keep summoning them. I want you to think of someone who goes to the doctor to treat diabetes or obesity, okay? And the doctor will say, here's an exercise plan, here's a diet plan, and here's some medication for you to lose weight, feel better, and improve your diabetes. So the doctor doesn't take it upon themselves to get you into your ideal weight there and then. And they don't cure you of diabetes there and then. They give you the plan and they tell you to follow it because it's your responsibility to make the efforts needed to manage your diabetes and to lose weight. Okay? The same goes for a raqi. They're only meant to advise you of what to do and what to take. For example, they might say, take some black seeds in the morning with some honey. They'll give you a prescription. But instead what they do is they will try to remove the problem there and then by summoning the demon. And then what will happen is that person will go back home, they'll feel better, the demon's gone, they'll slip into old habits, they forget to do their adhkar, they do not keep up with their ruqyah, they go back into their addictions and bad lifestyle, and then they come back to the raqi again. The jinns come back. And the raqi keeps going through a cycle with this person, and every single time the raqi is exposed to the demon, he gets affected and his family gets affected. So although it might be good for business, it's not good for your spiritual health. You might get loads of money from returning customers and patients wanting you to remove a demon, but you will be left depleted, depressed, and with so many spiritual problems by the end of it. And this is why Ruqyah is an inside job, because you can be taking on the issues of so many people who are lazy with their Ruqyah, and they're lazy with, doing what's needed, and you're paying for it. They might have the money to keep paying you for Ruqyah, but you're the one who's going to get attacked spiritually because they can't be bothered to do the work. And it's easy going to a raqi for a quick fix. He can get rid of the demon quickly and I can go back to my normal life. So this is why I advise against it. And it takes someone with an exceptionally high level of nafs and strength, spiritual strength, to be able to deal with so many people's demons. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult to do that. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel alayhi salam to do the ruqyah for the Prophet ﷺ, because the sihr was complex. And the magic that was done was so strong, so he didn't send a human. He sent Jibreel. Because only Jibreel could deal with the dark energy that was attached to that sihr. So when you as an average person take on this task for people, then imagine what kind of spiritual dangers and problems you're putting yourself through. A lot of people think they can handle it when they can't. And like I said in my previous podcast, if you can't handle it, sometimes you'll have to resort to magic to help you deal with all the attacks of the jinn. And this is how people become magicians, because they start to learn spells, and it's just a terrible place to be in. A question someone asked me is, I know of a person who dealt with magic, and then when the person died, the jinn went to the son, and then that son became crazy to the point he committed suicide, and now his wife has gone crazy and is afflicted by this evil spirit. Does this cycle ever stop? So this is what I was talking about earlier when I said that the jinn will come after your family members as well. So if the family members are not protected by the Quran and adhkar, then they're going to get targeted by the evil jinn who are after the magician. And if they put a spell on the family members to become insane, then remember what I told you about the hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold you to account for anything that happens in that time, even if someone commits suicide while being in a state of insanity. That person will be forgiven, inshallah. The next question is, what happens when an evil person dies? Does their evil qareen go to their children? No. Every qareen is assigned to just one human. So everyone has their own qareen. So when someone evil dies, that's it. They have their own accounting now with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that person's qareen will go and fulfill another mission, like I said, usually with evil magicians and fortune tellers and so on, unless they repent. Okay, there is a chance that the qareen can repent. Another question is, I'm scared from the evil that my father does or has done, and now he claims to have repented, but I still see the darkness in his eyes and face, and there is always bad evil energy in the home. When he dies, will his curse be passed on to the empathic children? Can this happen, and how do they protect themselves? So if someone in your home, like a parent, a husband, a wife, a sibling, if they're evil and they do bad things, it's got nothing to do with you. This is their character. So if you're an empathic person and you're a practicing Muslim, but you have a sibling or a husband or a father who isn't, and they commit lots of major sins, that's their problem. That is the load, the burden that they have to carry with them on the Day of Judgment when they have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not genetic. Curses don't get passed on to you because of the evil that they do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that everyone will be accountable for their own sins on the Day of Judgment. You're not going to carry the sins of another. And this is why we don't believe in the Christian concept of Isa alayhi salam dying for everyone's sins, because it makes no sense. So as long as you're protecting yourself with adhkar and ruqyah and good deeds, then don't worry about the evil someone else in your family has done. If it's affecting you, then leave. Okay? If you can't leave, create a distance. And you may have to double up or triple up on your adhkar as well when you know that there's bad energy from this person, or the home has bad energy because of the presence of that person. So just take the required actions needed to protect yourself from being in the presence of someone with very bad energy, and make dua for them that they heal and that they overcome the darkness that they're in. So the next question is, if a person who was dealing with black magic previously and molested children suddenly claim that they have stopped and repented, what happens to them? Will they be forgiven? So if the repentance is sincere and they have truly stopped dealing with evil jinn and magic and they've stopped abusing children, then yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that He will forgive everyone who repents from all their major sins before they die. However, people aren't as kind. So someone will still go through court cases because of their crimes, and they'll face the aftermath of everything they did when it came to dealing with magic and evil jinn. So they might get haunted by the jinn who still feel like this person owes them for everything they did for him. And he may suffer from terrible mental health and nightmares. And he may now have a terrible reputation because he was exposed in the community for being a child abuser. And he won't be trusted in the Islamic dawah field or as a raqi because he was exposed as a magician. So he's going to be dealing with all of this. So yes, the repentance will be accepted, but he's still got to face everything that came as a consequence of his actions. And sometimes he has to see his own family suffer because of his own actions. So if the jinn went after his family members, he will feel the guilt of seeing his sisters' lives being destroyed or his brothers' marriages be destroyed because the jinn went after them. And they may not have been aware of what he was doing, and they didn't take their adhkar seriously, and they got affected by his work. So just because someone seeks forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mean they'll be saved from the consequences of their actions in the dunya. It's like when someone repents from zina and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts their repentance. However, in the dunya, they have to deal with a child who was born out of wedlock, or they have to deal with an illness like HIV that they contracted from a sexual relationship. So you can't escape the consequences, but you can be forgiven. Now the next question is, I worry that I have fallen into shirk by visiting a raqi who turned out to be a magician, what will happen to me? So when you do things out of naivety and you have no idea what you're doing, you don't know that this is a major sin, you don't know that this person's a magician, you don't know they deal with evil jinn, you're just going to someone who was recommended to you to help solve your spiritual issues. Okay, when that happens, don't worry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold you to account for the things you didn't know. You're only held to account for the things that you did while knowing they were wrong. And if you did things not knowing that they are major sins, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will just send you a lesson to teach you and to make you aware that this is a major sin. So, like I said before, someone might visit a dodgy Ruqyah practitioner and you end up having more problems than you went to him with. For example, you may be traumatized now because he touched you inappropriately and molested you during the session. Sometimes they spit on you. Sometimes they abuse you and hit you and slap you in the name of Ruqyah. And it makes you question what on earth you've just done. And that's how you learn that it's a major sin. Another example is after visiting a Ruqyah practitioner, you start to experience sleep paralysis, or you experience a lot more of it. A lot of people report this. So sleep paralysis is basically a jinn sitting on your chest while you're sleeping, and you have a terrible nightmare that you feel you can't get out of, and you can't speak, you can't scream, you can't move. That's because a jinn is sitting on top of you. And if you are in the company of highly narcissistic individuals or magicians or people who are dealing with the evil jinn, they can transfer to you. A lot of people who are married to highly narcissistic individuals start to experience sleep paralysis after marriage. And if you visit one of these raqis, then what happens is some of their jinns can latch on to you and you'll start to experience this paralysis. And jinns do this to intimidate you and show you who is boss. They want to show you that you are weak and they are strong. And it can be a very terrifying experience for people, especially when they can't scream or call for help. So if you see someone in that state of paralysis, read over them. And if you're in that state of paralysis, do your best to internally read Ayatul Kursi and try to repeat to yourself, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Now, after experiencing something like that, you might be scared to go to sleep again. Don't be scared. Just play Surah Al-Baqarah in the room so it's loud enough for you to hear but quiet enough for you to sleep, and just read your adhkar and go back to sleep and make it a habit until you feel better. The next question is, are people with jinn possession drawn to good people? The answer is yes, because on one hand, their soul is so overwhelmed by the darkness in that person and they're pleading for your help. And they need your light and presence in this person's life for them to get better. Now, on the other hand, the demon that's possessed them is targeting you and wants to corrupt you as well. So you've got two different spirits who have two different needs, and that's why you find people who are possessed, they gravitate towards empathic people who are healed and have a lot of light. So the higher your nafs is, the stronger your faith and connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be. So both spirits will want to be near you, but for different reasons. One has a satanic mission, and the other has a mission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring this person closer to good people and closer to their healing. And this is how an empath becomes a lifeline for someone like this. So this person might come into your life as a marriage partner or as a client, as a friend, as a colleague, and a huge part of them believes that you can save them. And a huge part of you that loves to fix and save broken people believes that you can help this person. So you allow them into your life and you go out of your way and do everything in your power and your ability to heal them and help them become better people who find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be happy. And this is why narcissists are drawn to empathic people and why empathic people believe they can help narcissists. And that's the spiritual understanding of what brings them both together. The next question is the Sufi technique called Rabita, in which before or after Maghrib, they imagine a Sufi sheikh and that the nur, piety and ikhlas pass from him to them and fill their bodies, a satanic technique? Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt about that, okay? I have serious issues with all of these orders and tariqas and sects that have created their own worship rituals, many of which fall into shirk. They haven't been taken from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ or the practices of the Sahaba. And these additional beliefs and worship rituals have created a division in the ummah amongst the people. And that's why the Salafis can't stand the Sufis, and the Sufis can't stand the Salafis for calling them out on acts of shirk and bid'ah, because there has been a huge addition of worship rituals that the Prophet ﷺ never did. I mean, some of these sheikhs spit in people's water bottles so that they can get shifa. And sometimes the followers of these sheikhs will kiss their heads, their hands, their feet, and even their shoes. And not just their shoes, the bottom of their shoes, because they believe if they touch the sheikh in any way, they will be blessed and they will have some of his light. This is all shirk. All of it shirk. People didn't even do this with prophets. And even if someone tried to do it with the Prophet ﷺ, he would have hated it and ended it abruptly. In Surah Al-Kahf, verse 110, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Say, O Prophet, I am only a man like you, but it has been revealed to me that your God is only one God. So whoever hopes for the meeting with their Lord, let them do good deeds and associate none in worship of their Lord. So all these practices of putting a sheikh on a pedestal and believing that he is, the most pious and he's the best person in the world are all wrong. And I see a lot of these practices in the Naqshbandi and the Deobandi groups and all of those. I find them to be very problematic, as well as a lot of their worship rituals, like running around in circles and stomping feet heavily and chanting dhikr in a way that the Prophet ﷺ never did. I mean, they do it until they sweat and pant and faint because of how intense it is. That's not how worship is meant to be in Islam. In Islam, worship is beautiful and it's slow. Even the talbiyah for Hajj is beautiful and it's slow. It's something your soul enjoys listening to. But when you listen to other rituals that are new to Islam, and they're heavy and fast and repetitive to the point it makes you really dizzy, and it makes you enter a completely different spiritual realm, like you're high on some powerful drug, then know that it's wrong. Know that this is something not in line with Islamic principles of worship, especially if it feels cult-like. Okay, so if you feel like you've entered a cult and it's very intense, then know that this isn't the true Islam. Because pagan groups used to be like this, and they used to chant and dance around in circles and stomp their feet. This is what they used to do for their idols that they worshipped. And many non-Muslims do this in their cults as well. So when the Prophet ﷺ came with his message of monotheism, he taught people how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a completely different way, so that the worship rituals do not mimic those of the pagans. And the worship rituals he taught us were taught to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they are pleasing to him. So these are the only worship rituals that we need to follow. So any additions to the worship rituals that came after the death of the Prophet ﷺ are considered to be innovations, and innovations are to be avoided. The next question is, my sheikh says he uses good jinn to help and heal people. Is this true? No, it's not true, because the good jinn do not work directly with human beings because they are believers and they obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And evidence for this is in the first 15 verses of Surah Al-Jinn. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that it's only the evil jinn who communicate directly with human beings who are also evil. And the good jinn can serve human beings but without them being asked to. So if a sheikh claims to be a healer and he's doing spiritual operations on you, or he's giving you a taweez, or he's giving you something to drink or something to do to heal you from an illness or a spiritual problem, then know that he is dealing with the evil jinn to do this. So, for example, you might be in a different country to him and he claims that he can heal you from cancer. So he asks you for your date of birth and your mother's full name and other information like this. By the way, if someone asks you for these two things, your date of birth and your mother's maiden name, he's a magician. Okay? I'll tell you flat out, he's a magician. So after he asks you for this information, he'll say to you that he will start work from afar to heal you from cancer, whatever other illness you may have. Now you might get curious and ask him, how are you going to do it being so far away? How do you work? He'll say, I've been given spiritual powers from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have a very special ability to heal people. If you interrogate him more than this, especially when he starts asking you to do certain things, like sending him your photograph, then he may tell you then that I use the good jinn to help me do this. And if he says that, he is lying, okay? It's not possible to use the good jinn in any of this type of work. Someone said to me the other day that this is what happened to them, and they told this person that they can't afford to pay lots of money for this treatment. And the Raqi said, don't worry about it. I'll do it for free. It's fine. And he said that he did the operation and that they will have a full recovery from the illness. And she said that she did actually feel better, but she wondered why he offered to do it for free when he charges other people lots of money. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's because they don't want to lose empaths whom they could steal the light from. So if they find empaths unable to afford their services, they will offer to do it for free because what they gain from you is more valuable than money. Remember, these people are energy vampires and they need as much light as they can get to help them cope with the work that they are doing. Okay, because they are in darkness. They are always dealing with evil spirits. So the more light they can steal from empaths, the better. So when you agree to their service, you give them permission to enter your spiritual field, and they send the jinn to you to take that from you. And this only happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. But if you get worse in health, whether that's physical or spiritual or mental, after this healing service, then know that they've stolen some of your light. And if you feel no different, then they weren't able to. And if you feel better, it will only last for a short while before it wears off, because it's not real. It's just jinn manipulation to make you believe that you've healed from your illness and that this person indeed is someone with powerful, spiritual healing gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you'll trust him. And when you trust him, you're going to recommend him to everyone you know. And that's how corruption spreads in our communities. The next question is, what deals do magicians make with evil jinn? So the human magician is required to commit acts of kufr and major sins in return for the services of the evil jinn, such as possessing people and making them sick and so on. And this is why so many magicians are child abusers, and they groom women and they commit zina a lot, and they're into trafficking and drugs and everything you can think of they have to do in return for what the jinn do for them to make them look really powerful. And this usually starts with them not praying at all. And you'll notice that they might even say that they have their own way of praying and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's very different to how Muslims are meant to. So for example, they might say, I stay up all night and pray tahajjud and I connect with Allah that way, but you never see them praying during the day. Sometimes they don't fast. Even when they go for Hajj or Umrah, their worship rituals are different. It's because this is what the evil jinn want them to do in return for the spiritual benefits that they get from them. And the more jinn they control, the more acts of kufr they're going to do. So for example, if someone says, I have 100 jinns who serve me and under my control, this person is definitely a magician, and behind closed doors, they are committing vile acts and major sins to be able to have that power over them. Because remember when I said that it's only Sulaiman alayhi salam who was permitted to have control over the jinn. After him, no one was permitted to have that. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet alayhi salam said, إن عفريتا من الجن تفلت البارحة ليقطع علي صلاتي فأمكنني الله منه فأخذته فأردت أن أربطه على سارية من سواري المسجد حتى تنظروا إليه كلكم فذكرت دعوة أخي سليمان رب هب لي ملكا لا ينبغي لأحد من بعدي فرددته خاسئا. The Prophet ﷺ said, a strong demon from the jinn came to me yesterday suddenly to spoil my prayer, but Allah enabled me to overpower him, and so I caught him and intended to tie him to one of the pillars of the mosque so that you all may see him. But I remembered the dua of my brother Sulaiman alayhi salam, my Lord, grant me such a kingdom that shall not belong to anyone after me. So I let him go, cursed. So beware of anyone who tells you that they have control over the jinn. And I don't mean their qareen, okay, because you can have control over your qareen by silencing the waswas and not listening to the things he tells you to do. I'm talking about other jinns that people learn to communicate with. And I'm sure this question is going to come up as well, so I'll answer it now. Can people communicate with their qareens? Yes, but you have to be a magician to do so. Because no one sane will want to do that, because it's scary. Okay, once you tap into that world, there's no escape. And that's why they're always haunted. The magicians do it so that their qareen can obtain information from other people's qareens, and they bring this information back to the magician. So you can ask the magician anything about anyone, and the magician will send his qareen to find out. So you might ask about someone who's on the other side of the world, and the magician will say, they've just gone through a divorce, or this person is 47 years of age, or this person is pregnant. They can give you any information unless the person who the qareen is sent to has read their adhkar. That qareen will not snitch on that person because they can't. Okay, they're protected from the evil jinns that are sent to them. So what will happen is the qareen will come back to the magician saying, I don't know, I couldn't tap into this person. Their qareen wouldn't speak. So the magician will make up a lie, but he'll also keep that person in mind because he's now recognized that person as an empath with the light who has a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that person is kept on the back burner, and the magician will continue trying to send his qareen to access that person's energy field to obtain the light. And he will keep trying out of hope that one day you'll forget your adhkar and he'll be able to enter your energy field and succeed. Because remember, I told you these are energy vampires. They need as much light as possible to help them in their darkness. It's like Disney movie stuff, but everything in Disney is based on reality. Okay, all these witches and sorcerers always target the sweet, innocent, man or woman, the sweet princess, the kind prince. They target them because they want their light. They want to be them. Okay, the witches and sorcerers, they have deep jealousy and envy for empathic people because they're living in light and they're living in darkness and they hate it, but they can't escape. So they resort to stealing people's light to make their darkness more bearable. So yeah, they do communicate with their qareen. And if you go to someone like a tarot reader or a fortune teller and you ask them about someone you love, for example, or an ex, a lot of people do this. Does my ex still love me? She will send, or he will send, their qareen to your ex and find out. But the qareen says, nope, there's no information. They've read their adhkar. So the fortune teller or the tarot reader will say, yes, he still loves you and he wants you back. And then what happens is you become stuck in a cycle of waiting and waiting and waiting for this person to come back, and they don't. And it messes with your mental health. And you're waiting because the tarot reader told you they are definitely coming back into your life. So you might have other proposals and you reject them because you believe what the tarot reader said when they said they're coming back. And before you know it, you've wasted years of your life and you've committed a major sin because you believed the fortune teller. Psychics who deal with the Jinn will also tell you about twin flames, and they encourage you to be with someone narcissistic. So they might tell you your twin flame is someone who you've just broken up with, and you've broken up with them because they were abusive, or you've broken up with them because you found out they were liars and manipulators. And they might ask for your star signs to confirm if they are your soulmate or twin flame. And they just go with how they see you feeling about this person. So if they believe you want this person back, then they will tell you what you want to hear and say, yep, that person is your twin flame. And women and men usually ask psychics about men and women who abandoned them, cheated on them, or ghosted them. So how could they possibly be soulmates? People go to psychics to get closure, or what they're told is the truth on certain matters. Some of these psychics will give you a taweez after that, or they'll refer you to a magician who will give you a taweez to wear if you want someone back. They also try to give you something to drink if you visit them, but it's always a spell. And it's to open up your spiritual portal so they can take what they want from you. So these are psychics who can give people readings over the phone, email, and in person. They usually have their crystal ball or their cards and other objects. So be careful because these people are all witches. And they will get you addicted to visiting them because you'll always want to know updates on the people you're asking about. And it will seriously mess with your mental health and it will be all you think about. And some of these people claim to be Muslim and they say that they use Allah's names to do the readings and so on. It's all a load of rubbish. They just do that to justify what they're doing is okay when it's not at all. And they only say these things to gain your trust. Because it makes no sense that they say that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they do love spells. And if you look into their personal lives, you'll find that it's a chaotic mess. Everything in their own lives is falling apart. So if these spells really worked, then they would have perfect lives, but they don't. They are miserable, they're disturbed, they're possessed, and they have 101 problems. And sometimes people go to these people to ask about the deepest secrets of others. So sometimes the magician again will send their qareen to go and find out for you because you're paying them for the service, so they don't care about what secrets they have to expose to you. You're paying them for it. And sometimes they'll tell you that they were unable to get this information for you because their spirit said no, or the spirit said that they can't. And it's because that person read their adhkar. If that person did not read their adhkar, you could either find out things, or the tarot reader or the fortune teller or the magician will say something to you that's true, but mix it with 100 lies, like the Prophet ﷺ said they would. So you may hear something that you're really not prepared to hear, and it could cause a crisis. For example, they tell you that your spouse is cheating on you, or they're having an affair with someone from their workplace, and it devastates you. But it's not true. And now you're having so many marital issues over this because you believe the magician. And this could lead to a divorce, and this is how the magic breaks up husband and wife, okay? And you believe this person because they've said other things that have been true, and they do that to gain your trust. And then they start feeding you lies when they are unable to obtain the information you need from their qareen. So they do this because they want money. And when they say spirit, they mean their jinn, their qareen. But they will never tell you that spirit is a jinn. They will tell you spirit is an angel. And before you know it, you're addicted to visiting these people because they are giving you the information you want, and you're falling deeper and deeper into major sins. Always remember that good jinn don't communicate with people, and neither do angels. Okay, some people might see angels. There are people who have that ability, but angels won't speak to you. So the spirits all of these people use are the evil jinns, and they lie a lot. The next question is, what are the different types of black magic that we need to be aware of? So I'd say one of the popular types of black magic would be the one in which someone's DNA is used. So the magician will take the fingernails, the hair, the period pads, and sweaty clothes of someone to do the sihr on them. And it's the same type of magic that the Jewish man, Labib, did on the Prophet ﷺ. And this is usually hidden somewhere. It could be in the house of the victim, or buried, or thrown in the sea. I've put some Instagram links below to some videos that show you what kind of sihr this is and what it looks like. And if you do happen to find something like this, do destroy it, because you could be giving someone some serious relief out there somewhere. Another type is the voodoo doll with the pins, and sometimes you'll find someone's photo attached to the doll. And this is usually sihr done on children. So again, if you see a doll with loads of pins and symbols on the doll's face, then remove the pins, because the pins are where the magic is. And always remember to read your adhkar when you do this. And if you do happen to find something like this, but you're too scared to remove the pins or destroy the sihr, then take it to an imam or a sheikh who can do it. This will be counted as a huge sadaqah for you, because you have no idea what relief you're going to be giving someone. Someone might recover from a serious terminal illness because you've removed the pins, or you've taken it to someone who can deal with this properly. I really can't say this enough. Another form of sihr is writing on pictures. So you'll see photographs of people, and they will have numbers, codes, and strange words written all over them. Sometimes the words are written on the forehead, on the cheeks, on the neck, on the chest. So depending on where the words are, that's where the sihr has been directed. Again, I've posted an example below in the description box for you to see. Another form of black magic is the taweez. And this is a very small piece of paper that the magician has written on. And he may have written some Quran verses. And then underneath the Quran verses, there are codes and numbers and strange letters or strange words. Some of these words can have satanic meanings, and some of the codes can have satanic meanings. And they ask you to wear it as a locket or a bracelet, or bury it. And they say it will bring you good luck, it will solve your problems, your behavior issues, your spiritual afflictions, but it actually makes you worse. So if you have something like this, read your adhkar and burn the piece of paper. Other forms of magic can come in food and drink. So someone might put something in your food or drink and make you really sick. So if you're suspicious of someone already, and you think they might be doing black magic and they're into these things and they visit magicians, try to avoid eating from their food. Another type of black magic is chanting or saying things you don't know. So you might visit a sheikh and he might ask you to repeat things and you have no idea what they mean. And he says, this is Ruqyah, just repeat after me. And it doesn't make any sense, or you're not familiar with these Quran verses because they aren't Quran verses. Okay, he might ask you to chant names or words, but these words have satanic meaning. And what you're doing is chanting magic. Okay, you're calling upon evil spirits and you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And there are lots of people in the music industry as well coming out recently to say that the music that lots of people listen to that have vulgar lyrics about major sins and zina and drugs and crime, it's all magic. And it makes sense, because when people listen to explicit lyrics that are highly sexual, you notice that those people become very promiscuous and they start to become afflicted with the ashiq jinn, and people become hypersexualized and they dress inappropriately and act inappropriately because they love to listen to this music. And notice how rock music and heavy metal music has such a heavy satanic influence on the people who love to listen to it. So they start to become devil worshippers and they join satanic cults. And they dress like it's Halloween every day. And they're always disturbed. They always have jinn issues. It's because of the music. There's magic in the music. So those are the main examples, and may Allah protect us from all of them. And this is just a side note on something that I want to raise some awareness on. A lot of people are getting very strong evil eye and sometimes black magic because of their beauty. And it's a reason why it's not a good idea to post your pictures online, especially when you know you have a lot of beauty. Because what this envy will do is that it will start to take your beauty away from you, and you'll notice that people who are beautiful aren't getting married and that they're aging quickly, because people believe that they have an advantage of being beautiful when it comes to marriage and opportunities, and because they don't feel beautiful or as beautiful, they want to take it from you, and they do this to make themselves feel better. Okay, so flaunting yourself online because you believe you're so beautiful is only going to bring you so many problems. Now that's envy. Now if someone does black magic on your beauty, this is more serious, because one of two things will happen. The first thing is that you will notice that your beauty is disappearing. So you may experience sudden hair fall, or sudden weight loss, or sudden weight gain. And if you're the type to do surgeries, you'll notice that those surgeries keep going wrong. And you'll have issues with your teeth and issues with your health. And you'll start to look very, very unwell. Okay, your face will sink in, and you see it sometimes on influencers and people who are active on social media. You're like, whoa, what happened to her? She looks completely different and she looks very unwell. It could be an illness from hasad and envy, but it can also be black magic. I know a woman who was so beautiful, mashallah. She had the most amazing hair, the most amazing physique, and she woke up one morning with all her hair on her pillow. It was really scary for her. She went to a sheikh, and the sheikh told her someone's done black magic on her to lose her beauty. And she's been doing Ruqyah for years, but her hair never grew back like it was. So you've got to be really careful about things like this, because afterwards she fell into a very deep depression and she started to overeat for comfort, and that's what ruined her physique. So the magic affected her body as well by causing her to become obese from the depression. So always read your adhkar, because it's devastating to see something like that. I mean, she thought she was having a nightmare when she woke up and found all the hair on her pillow and not on her head. Okay, it's serious. You've got to take these things seriously, because people's energy can be so bad. That's the first type, okay? The envy that takes away your beauty and you can see it yourself. Now, if someone does black magic, what will happen is you won't necessarily see it, but everyone else will. So you may be very beautiful or very handsome, but everyone sees you as ugly. Everyone sees you as unattractive. And you won't get married and you won't get approached. And you'll always wonder why you're not getting any proposals, because you know you're not ugly. You know that you're beautiful. It's because someone's done something to you to make everyone see you in that way. Now, sometimes it is the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah blinds a lot of people to seeing your beauty, because He doesn't want those people to come near you and marry you, because He knows they don't have good intentions or they're not good people. That's different. You will get people who still see your beauty but can't approach you. When black magic is done, everybody will see you as unattractive. Not some people, everybody. And that's how you know it's black magic, okay? And sometimes strange things will happen to you that have no answer. And this will also indicate that you've got black magic. So for example, you can't brush your hair anymore. I remember there was a case in Saudi of a woman who woke up being unable to brush her hair because it felt like wood. And there was a woman who was unable to brush her teeth properly. No matter how much she brushed her teeth, they wouldn't be clean. And some people's hair stands on end. So no matter how much gel you put in your hair, or how much mousse, or how much cream, it won't come down. This is black magic. And also, another indicator is when you have very bad body odour. So no matter how much you shower or have a bath, the smell won't go away. There's a rancid smell that comes from your body. This is also an indication that someone is possessed by a very evil jinn. Okay? So these are all signs that you have a spiritual affliction and you need to start Ruqyah. The next question is it possible for humans to have sexual relationships with the jinn? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. And there are two categories of people who do this. The first category are those who have a severe ashiq jinn affliction. And the second category of people are the magicians. Okay? So what usually happens is a female jinn will go into the bedroom of a man at night in the dark and he'll feel her presence. And it's the same with women. So they will be approached by a male jinn in their bedrooms in the dark and they will feel themselves having sexual intercourse with an entity. And sometimes it's in the form of a very vivid dream, but they wake up and feel everything physically. And if men and women are able to communicate with these ashiq jinns, then they can resume a relationship with them. And that's why these people don't get married. And the reason why is because they're getting their sexual needs fulfilled by the jinn. So like I said before, these are severe cases. These are not regular cases of people who have ashiq jinn. These are the worst cases. And it's very disturbing because sometimes these people can see the jinn and they can hear them and definitely feel them. So it's not a good place to be in. It's super scary. And you need ruqyah for this, like serious ruqyah and adhkar to be able to get rid of this affliction. And unfortunately, a lot of people get this affliction from excessive masturbation. So if you watch a lot of pornography and you self-pleasure a lot, you're going to attract these entities into your life because they find what you're doing appealing and they want to do it with you. They see that you're doing it alone, they're like, hold on, let me join you. And that's how people enter sexual relationships with the jinn. Now, sometimes it's not always pleasurable for people. Sometimes the jinn are so intimidating and scary that people are terrified of their visits at night. So it's always best to play Surah Al-Baqarah if you are going through this, because if you don't, if you let it go and you're intimidated by them, then you could get raped by the ashiq jinn. There are women who have reported this. And if you want to hear something even more bizarre, some women can get pregnant from the jinn. And what will happen is they'll either have a hybrid baby who will be half jinn and half human, or they'll have a phantom pregnancy which makes them look like they are pregnant. And they'll have all the symptoms of pregnancy, their bellies will get big, they'll even go through childbirth. But there's no fetus, there's no baby. And until now, scientists haven't really figured out how on earth that happens. They've put it down to hormones. But this is what happens when women become impregnated by the jinn. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that Bilqis, the queen of Sheba, Malikat Saba, the one who Sulaiman alayhi salam gave da'wah to, was half jinn and half human? Prominent Muslim scholars such as Al-Qurtubi and Al-Tha'labi and Al-Tabari claimed that she was human from her father's side and jinn from her mother's side. So it did used to happen and it continues to happen because there are people who do have contact with the jinn, whether they want to or not. Okay, and that's why Ruqyah is incredibly important for you if this is what you're going through. And if you do have pornography addictions and masturbation addictions, please try and stop that, because you are bringing evil spirits to you, as this is the environment that they love. And what can happen as well is that you will start to become homosexual and have homosexual feelings towards others because of this Ashiq Jinn affliction. I've spoken about it before in other podcasts, but I have noticed a pattern in clients who have become secretly homosexual because of these visits from the Ashiq Jinn. And it starts with watching so much pornography. And you might say that you watch it for the women. Well, you're watching the naked men too. So that will enter your heart eventually. Okay, it's a spiritual affliction that happens to you when you watch naked people all the time and all of that, okay? A lot of men who are porn addicts are secretly gay because they've come to enjoy watching naked men as well. And the same applies to women who watch porn. Okay, so if you do not deal with your jinn issues, you'll be bringing upon yourself many more problems that will be harder to overcome. So do work on yourselves, and this is your jihad an-nafs. The next question is, can empaths be psychics? And the answer is yes. And empaths will experience this either from childhood or during solitude. And this solitude is not by choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them in solitude. So you'll find them alone for very long periods of time. And they're usually isolated in rural areas like mountains. So these are people who are very much connected to nature. And sometimes you'll find that empaths have both. So they have spiritual gifts given to them from childhood, and they'll be isolated as adults. And during this solitude, they build a very strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they don't have responsibilities and loads of people around them. And when you don't have lots of people around you, your energy field is more clear than others, so you pick up on people's energy very quickly. Okay, you will know who is good, who is bad, who has jinn problems, who is secretly envious of you, and so on. Okay, so the clearer your energy field, the quicker you'll be able to pick up on other people's vibrations. And the more you surround yourself with people, the more crowded your energy field will be, and you become overwhelmed, and you'll struggle to pick up the energy of people and assess people's characters properly. So essentially what these empaths have is an extraordinary intuition. It's got nothing to do with the jinn, the good or the bad. Their intuition is so deep that they can know what's wrong with you just by looking at you. They know how you're feeling just by looking at you or hearing you speak. And they can see your aura sometimes, and they can see if you have any jinn attached to you. They can see if you're depressed, if you're lonely. They can see if you're suffering in silence. All of that is energy. Empathic psychics can see and feel, okay? And these empaths are more likely to see divine dreams as well. So they might see the Prophet ﷺ in dreams. They might see other prophets in their dreams. They might have a lot of messages about the present and the future. And they can also receive many messages about the past. So, for example, anything to do with black magic and important things that happen that they need to make sense of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show them in dreams before Fajr. And they're also more likely to be visited by the righteous people in the barzakh in their dreams before Fajr. So these righteous people might come to them with messages and news and things that they need from them, for example, sadaqah. So they might know that a relative of yours didn't go to a good place in the barzakh, so they come to you in a dream asking you to make sadaqah on their behalf to lessen their punishment. And they rely on you to do this because they know how empathic you are and that you'll take these dreams seriously. Okay, so these are the types of dreams that empath psychics will see. And this is the knowledge of the unseen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to have. Empath psychics also have great healing energy. So by being in their presence, you can heal because their energy is so powerful. So it's a spiritual type of energy that allows you to feel so much peace when you're around them. And you can't explain it, but you always feel so much better in their presence and your iman increases. Okay? Now, this is something that magicians hate because it's a natural and divine spiritual gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to high-level empaths. And that's why magicians always target these people. This is what they want to steal from these empath psychics. Okay? So they want to steal empath energy anyway. They always go after their light. But the people who irritate them the most are the empath psychics with these spiritual abilities and gifts. Because they can only pretend to have them to draw in business and make people believe that they're special. But they have to use the evil jinn to make it look like they have the same spiritual gifts as empaths. So the people who call themselves psychics, but they read your palm, they read teacups and horoscopes, and tell your future through a crystal ball, or tell you what's going to happen to you through tarot cards, all of these people are mushrikeen, and they use the evil jinn, including their qareens, to find out the information that you're asking about. Now, someone might go to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller tells them that someone in their family is going to die within the next 4 weeks. Okay, now this is going to cause a lot of anxiety and distress because they don't know who it's going to be, because they believe the fortune teller. Now, let's say it happens, and a family member passes away in that time period. How did the fortune teller know the knowledge of the unknown future? And this is information only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, there are two answers for this. The first one is they took a really lucky guess. And the second is answered in Surah Al-Jinn in verse 8. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the evil jinn said, وَأَنَّا لَمَسْنَا السَّمَاءَ فَوَجَدْنَاهَا مُلِئَتْ حَرَسًا شَدِيدًا وَشُهُبًا. Earlier we tried to reach heaven for news, only to find it filled with stern guards and shooting stars. وَأَنَّا كُنَّا نَقْعُدُ مِنْهَا مَقَاعِدَ لِلسَّمْعِ فَمَنْ يَسْتَمِعِ الْآنَ يَجِدْ لَهُ شِهَابًا رَصَدًا. We used to take up positions there for eavesdropping, but whoever dares eavesdrop now will find a shooting star lying in wait for him. So the evil jinns, they used to eavesdrop on the conversations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have with the angels from the time the Quran was revealed, and when it comes to Allah informing the angels of what's going to happen to the people. So for example, he might be having a conversation with the angel of death, and these jinns are eavesdropping, and they get some of the information that's been said and they take it to the fortune tellers. And every time that happens, the guards of the heavens, who are the angels, they throw a shooting star on the jinn as a punishment for eavesdropping. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could stop this completely from happening, but there's a test in this for us, because the jinn are known to take some truth and mix it with many lies. So a jinn could find out that someone is going to die very soon. They take that information to the fortune teller, and then it happens. So when someone visits a fortune teller, the magician will send a jinn to sit in the sky below the heavens to find out this information of the unseen future. And then they come back to the magician and whisper it in their ear. But what they say could be a load of lies, but the magician doesn't know that. Okay, they're just taking the jinn's word for it. And sometimes it is the truth. But you can't take a risk on visiting these types of people, because you could lose your iman, and you could lose your mental health, and you could lose so much in your life because you believe all of the things that are being told to you, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly warned us about this. There are people who have left Islam because of dealing with magicians and fortune tellers, because they believe they can obtain all their information from them. And it's made them doubt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love for them and His power, amongst other things. Because if they can get quick answers about things they've always wanted to know about, then why would they need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's the mindset that causes them to leave Islam and become mushrikeen. So we were warned about this in the Quran and Sunnah for a strong reason. And think about it. There's a strong reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want us to read people's minds and know people's secrets, because if you knew them, you'd hate everybody. You'd hate everybody if you could read people's minds. And you'd never trust anyone either, you see. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us not to do something, it's always for our own good. The matters of the heart and mind should only be left to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Especially when you know that you are asking someone who's dodgy about these things, someone who claims to be a psychic or a spiritual healer, but it's clear they use the jinn, it's clear they use some magic. If you're asking them about matters of the unseen, you are falling into a huge major sin. And in Surah Al-Jinn, we learn that the shooting star has been created as a punishment for the jinn. So we know that the eavesdropping is still happening, because until now, in our time, we still see shooting stars in the night sky. And another giveaway of narcissistic psychics and people who use black magic and who are magicians is that they will give you information that's very specific about you or someone else. So they will say things like, when you were 10, you fell off your bike, or you had a traumatic experience in a car crash. They will specify the times and who was even with you at that moment to show you how incredibly powerful they are and how spiritually gifted they are. All of this is an indication that they are magicians, because empath psychics will never be able to specifically pinpoint times to you. They don't have that ability, but they have the general ability to see that you were traumatized as a child, or that you're traumatized or heartbroken as an adult, and so on. So be careful about magicians who brag about their ability to do this. And be careful about going to hypnotherapists as well, because they can completely reprogram your brain to what they want it to be. So if they are a magician, they can hypnotize you to be a kafir or a kafira. You've got to be very careful with hypnotherapy, because many people have woken up from hypnotherapy as completely different people. So try your best to only sign up with therapies that are in line with the Quran and Sunnah. So talking about your issues is fine. It's not backbiting, because you're trying to find a solution to your problems, especially when you're dealing with a narcissistic husband or wife or family member. A lot of people feel that it's going to fall into backbiting. It's not, because you're trying to seek help for a serious problem that you're facing. And be wary as well about yoga, because yoga is actually Hindu practice, and if you have a non-Muslim instructor, you may end up committing shirk by performing their worship rituals and chanting and saying words that will call upon their gods and evil spirits and so on. Okay, you've got to be careful with yoga too. I might make a separate podcast about these practices, but it's just a general heads up for you to be wary about what you do as therapy to heal from your issues. Sometimes you'll bring upon yourself more issues than you started with. And this brings me on to the next question, which is believing in zodiac signs haram? So in astrology, a sign of the zodiac refers to one of the 12 specific constellations of the zodiac that the sun passes through. And this is a science that was actually taken from the Islamic Golden Age. The Arabs were the best astrologers, and a Persian scholar named Abdurrahman al-Sufi took information from the Arab astrologers and from the Greek astrologers, and he mapped the stars. And you can find his drawings in a book called The Book of the Fixed Stars. And it contains detailed star charts describing the northern and southern constellations and constellations of the zodiac. So in his book, you can see illustrations of constellations. So for example, he drew a lion, which is now known as Leo. And it was Western astrologers later down the line who believed that a person's personality can be predicted using their sign of the zodiac. So there's nothing concrete about this. They just produce studies about the correlation between a time someone is born and the zodiac. So you may find that you do have lots of personality traits under the zodiac sign that is assigned to your date of birth. And you may find it true for others as well. But what scholars don't like about zodiac signs is that people judge others in accordance to what these people wrote about being born in this particular time. So, for example, it's wrong to say that I will never marry someone who's a Gemini because they're known to be XYZ. Or I will only marry someone who is a Taurus, Scorpio, Aries because, my horoscope told me that these are the best matches for me in marriage. So all of this is hocus pocus rubbish, right? And it's just a way to cause fitna among the people. So I do notice these days that people will ask for someone's star sign up front when they're considering someone for marriage to assess if they're good enough or not. And this is wrong. Because the zodiac sign might say that this particular person is known to be angry and they're vengeful and they're liars and cheaters and manipulative. Right? If you believe that, then you could lose a very good person because they aren't those things. And the reason why they aren't those things is because they were raised well. Or because they have iman, they have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which stops them having those traits. So yes, perhaps if they didn't have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or any morals, then yes, they would be manipulative, they'd be cheaters and liars and deceptors and so on. But that applies to everybody. Okay, so whether you're a Sagittarius or a Leo or an Aries, you can all be bad people if you have no morals and if you have no fear of Allah and so on. Or you could be a Scorpio, Cancer or Libra and be the best of people because you have deen and iman and a good upbringing and good morals, even though your star sign says otherwise. So it's not permissible to judge anyone in accordance to their star sign, but the star sign itself is a science in astrology. And what magicians did with zodiac signs is they started to assign horoscopes to them. And a horoscope is a prediction of what's going to happen to the people who are in that zodiac sign. So for example, if you're Sagittarius, they'll say, next week you're going to come into a lot of money. And if you're an Aries, then you're going to meet the love of your life. And if you're Capricorn, you're going to receive some bad news, but you'll get over it, and so on. That's what a horoscope is. So people who read horoscopes and believe in them have unfortunately committed shirk. The next question is, I fell out with my best friend because the Raqi told me that she did black magic on me, but she swears that she didn't. Do these Raqis tell the truth? So again, if the Raqi is actually a magician, they lie about these things to cause fitna between the people. And if they've asked you for your date of birth and mother's maiden name and all of that information to find out, then it's a lie. Don't believe what the Raqi says when it comes to them telling you who did the black magic, because this is information they can't actually reveal. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reveal it to you in a dream. So if you're listening to Surah Al-Baqarah for 7 days like I advise you to do, and you don't have a dream about who did the black magic, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to reveal the identity of the person who did it for a good reason. Or you're not ready to find out this information, and it might come to you later. So when you go out of your way to ask a Raqi or a Sheikh or some spiritual person about it, you're going to cause yourself harm by knowing. And in most cases, it's a lie anyway. And you might tell the Raqi that you suspect it's your auntie, and he'll just hold on to that information, and he'll say, yep, it's her. Because it's actually dangerous for them to reveal the name of the person who did the sihr, and the evil jinns will punish them for it, because they'll see it as them snitching on these people. And the jinns don't want you to know who's done the magic so you don't avoid them. So if it's somebody in your family, then it's in their best interests that you are in the dark energy of that person at all times. They don't want you to know who it is, so that this person can continue doing black magic on you. And that's why, more often than not, the Raqi will lie about who's done it. And if they want to tell you, but they can't tell you the name of the person who did it, they might say to you, they're in your father's side of the family, or the person is in your mother's side of the family, or someone very close to you. They'll just give you a hint, because they can't reveal the name. They'll get in trouble if they do. And sometimes you'll find an empathic Raqi who's a psychic who will advise you about certain people to stay away from, because he can pick up on the very bad energy of some people in your life. So this person will never tell you who it is, who did the black magic, because they simply don't know, unless it's revealed to them in a dream from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they will advise you to keep away from certain people who have very bad energy, and they have the ability to pick up on this energy from videos and photos of people as well. The next question is AI magic? Yes, I definitely believe so, because it's not possible for humans to be able to come up with technology like this without the help of the Jinn. Okay, so artificial intelligence is basically the intelligence of the Jinn. They can't mimic human intelligence exactly because it's far superior, but you'll get instant answers to things through ChatGPT and other apps in the blink of an eye, when it would take you ages to research certain subjects and find the answers to specific questions. So the fact you can get such detailed answers and have conversations with ChatGPT like they're a real person, and how you can create videos and pictures that are so realistic in seconds, is a reason to believe that a huge spiritual force is behind it. And this is one of the tools of the Dajjal, because it will be used to deceive so many people. And it's getting scary, because you can create videos that look so realistic you believe it's true. And both holograms and virtual reality are promoted. And before you know it, you will not be able to tell what's true and what's not, and what's real and what's not. So what we're seeing now is only the beginning. By 2030 and 2040, tech will be so advanced because of the use of magic. And what's dangerous about applications like ChatGPT is that at the moment, it's giving you the truth when you ask it certain questions. And this is to get your trust. In the future, it will start to lie because everyone now becomes dependent on ChatGPT for everything. So if you ask it questions about Islam and about the world and about God, it will give you the truth. But wait 5-10 years and you'll notice that the answers start to change, because they've already got the trust of people to believe and rely on ChatGPT for knowledge. So I advise that you do not rely on ChatGPT and all of these AI apps to do your work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with a magnificent brain that differentiates us from all other creation, not for us to be using ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. So it's offensive to the human being to rely on these things instead of their own brain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them to use and be creative with. But what the Dajjal wants is to dominate the human brain, because if he can get us to depend on artificial intelligence, then he can control us and brainwash us and become our only source of knowledge, because towards the end of time, the true scholars, will disappear. And that's why the time of the Dajjal will be the greatest trial for Muslims known to man, because the majority of humans will be brain dead and there won't be true knowledge anymore. Only a few people will know it. And Isa alayhi salam will be the one who will bring back true knowledge to the dunya about Allah and Islam and the Prophet alayhi salam and so on. Because always remember, Iblis envies the human being for the mind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. And he wants to take it from us. He wants to destroy it. Because Adam alayhi salam was elevated in Jannah as the masterpiece creation because of it. So Iblis wants to mock the human being by replacing human intelligence with artificial intelligence to prove that Jinn intelligence is more superior. And he will do this via the Dajjal and all his tricks, until all true knowledge disappears and human beings become reliant on the Jinn, and they will reclaim their status as the ambassadors of the earth like they were before the humans. So the next and final question is it possible to have a jinni friend? I think the person who asked this question really loves the movie Aladdin. And the answer is yes and no. So yes in childhood and no in adulthood. So you'll find some children do befriend the children of the Jinn, And it may look to you that they have imaginary friends when actually they are playing with the jinn. And to understand this relationship better, you need to go to podcast 80, which is a look inside the spiritual world of children. And I think if I can remember, I posted some examples of what this looks like. So it's clear that the children are playing with someone who you can't see because they're pulling them, pushing them, laughing with them, chasing them, and you'll even see them having conversations with them. So that's the only time when the humans and jinn can form an innocent friendship. And sometimes it's not innocent. Sometimes evil jinn children will bully human children, and you'll see that children get scared and they start screaming and they get really upset when their toys are taken from them by the jinn or when the jinn hide their things. So they're just like human children. Some children are bullies and some children are very sensitive and sweet and empathic. So, they have their own world like we do, and the jinn have different personalities as well. Now, in adulthood, it's not possible at all because the good jinn will not befriend you or communicate with you. So the only ones who will be the evil jinns. And how this works is they need to be summoned by a satanic ritual. Okay? So don't go believing what you see in Aladdin. It's not possible to have that kind of friendship with any jinni. And the jinni in the lamp came from a magician who trapped him in there. So some people, for example, they use a Ouija board. And this is a flat board with letters, numbers and symbols that is used to communicate with spirits. It's like a board game, a very dangerous board game. So it's also known as a talking board, a spirit board, or a witch board. And religious Christians believe that using these boards can lead to demonic possession because they are a satanic practice. And they are used by witches and magicians to summon the jinn who will work with them. Now, this is one method of many, but what usually happens is when the jinn are summoned, they get trapped in rings and lockets and ornaments like lamps. So you'll notice that magicians always wear these big black stone rings or dark stone rings. It could be dark green, dark blue, dark red, but usually there are jinn trapped in there. So if a magician ever gifts you a ring, you've got to be very careful because now you've got a jinn assigned to you in that ring. But the magician won't tell you that. So he's basically given the jinn someone to have control over, which is you. Okay, you're a victim. Now, if someone wants to learn how to be a magician, then the magician will teach you how to make this jinni work for you and be your friend. And where do they get this concept from? It's from the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, who had an army of jinn who could do anything for him because of their spiritual powers. So these magicians wanted to achieve the same level of authority over the jinn and be so powerful because the work of the jinn can help him do anything. So a magician could click his fingers and have something brought to him very quickly. Or he could click his fingers and be transported somewhere else. Or he could put on an amazing magic show to fool people into believing that he is a prophet or someone, of a very high status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how they've always deceived people. So I'm just going to read a part of the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam for you to see why so many magicians want to have friends from the jinn. So in Surah An-Naml, from verse 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرَ فَقَالَ مَا لِيَ لَا أَرَى الْهُدْهُدْ أَمْ كَانَ مِنَ الْغَائِبِينَ. One day Sulaiman alayhi salam inspected the birds and wondered, why is it that I cannot see the hoopoe? Or could he be absent? لَأُعَذِّبَنَّهُ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا أَوْ لَأَذْبَحَنَّهُ أَوْ لَيَأْتِيَنِّي بِسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ. I will surely subject him to a severe punishment, or even slaughter him, unless he brings me a very good excuse for his absence. فمكث غير بعيد فقال أحط بما لم تحط به وجئتك من سبأ بنبأ يقين. It was not long before the bird came and said, I have found out something you do not know. I have just come to you from Sheba with sure news. إني وجدت امرأة تملكهم وأوتيت من كل شيء ولها عرش عظيم. Indeed, I found a woman ruling over them, who has been given everything she needs, and who has a magnificent throne. وجدتها وقومها يسجدون للشمس من دون الله، وزين لهم الشيطان أعمالهم، فصدهم عن السبيل فهم لا يهتدون. I found her and her people prostrating to the sun instead of Allah, for Satan has made their bad deeds appealing to them, hindering them from the right way and leaving them unguided. ألا يسجدوا لله الذي يخرج الخبأ في السماوات والأرض ويعلم ما تخفون وما تعلنون. So they do not prostrate to Allah, who brings forth what is hidden in the heavens and the earth, and knows what you all conceal and what you all reveal. Allahu la ilaha illahu Rabbul Arsh al-Azim. He is Allah, there is no God worthy of worship except Him, the Lord of the mighty throne. قال سننظر أصدقت أم كنت من الكاذبين. Sulaiman said, we will see whether you are telling the truth or lying. اذهب بكتاب هذا فألقه إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. Go with this letter of mine and deliver it to them, then stand aside and see how they will respond. قالت يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم. The queen later announced, O chiefs, indeed a noble letter has been delivered to me. إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. It is from Sulaiman and it reads, in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, most merciful. ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. Do not be arrogant with me, but come to me fully submitting to Allah. قالت يا أيها الملأ افتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. She said, O chiefs, advise me in this matter of mine, for I would never make any decision without you. قالوا نحن أولو قوة وأولو بأس شديد والأمر إليك فانظري ماذا تأمرين. They responded, we are a people of great strength and military might, but the decision is yours, so decide what you will command. قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون. She reasoned, indeed when kings invade a land, they ruin it and humiliate its nobles. They really do so. وإني مرسلة إليهم بهدية فناظرة بما يرجع المرسلون. But I will certainly send him a gift and see what response my envoys will return with. فلما جاء سليمان قال أتمدونني بمال فما آتاني الله خير مما آتاكم بل أنتم بهديتكم تفرحون. When the chief envoy came to him, Sulaiman said, do you offer me wealth? What Allah has granted me is far greater than what He has granted you. No, it is you who rejoice in receiving gifts. ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها ولنخرجنهم منها أذلة وهم صاغرون. Go back to them, for we will certainly mobilize against them forces which they can never defeat, and we will drive them out from there in disgrace, fully humbled. قال يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين. Sulaiman asked, O chiefs, which of you can bring me her throne before they come to me in full submission? So here he's speaking to the jinn because they're the only ones who could do something like that. قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك وإني عليه لقوي أمين. One mighty jinn responded, I can bring it to you before you rise from your seat, and I am quite strong and trustworthy for this task. قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أأشكر أم أكفر ومن شكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن ربي غني كريم. But the jinn who had knowledge of the scripture said, I can bring it to you in the blink of an eye. So when Sulaiman saw the throne placed before him, he exclaimed, This is by the grace of my Lord to test me whether I am grateful or ungrateful. And whoever is grateful, it is only for their own good. But whoever is ungrateful, surely my Lord is self-sufficient, most generous. قال نكر لها عرشها ننظر أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون. Then Sulaiman said, Disguise her throne for her, so that we may see whether she will recognize it, or if she will not be able to. فلما جاءت قيل أهكذا عرشك قالت كأنه هو وأوتينا العلم من قبلها وكنا مسلمين. So when she arrived, it was said to her, Is your throne like this? She replied, It looks to be the same. We have already received knowledge of Sulaiman's prophethood before this miracle and have submitted to Allah. So as you can see, having friends from the jinn is highly appealing for people because of the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam and what the jinn were able to do for him. And it was these miracles that grew his kingdom and inspired other people to embrace Islam because no one else had the authority over the jinn. So this is what magicians want to achieve, but they never can. And the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam is actually the foundational concept of so many Disney movies and other movies like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. You'll notice in Disney movies a lot of magic is used. So let's go back to Aladdin for a moment. You'll notice that the genie can do anything for him. He can turn him into a prince, he can create a wedding entourage for him, he can bring things from the other side of the world and make him rich and make him famous and so on. And this is what a lot of sheikhs have done. So it's the genies they command who made them famous and made them rich and made them almost worshipped by their followers. So this would be magic of atf, which is magic that brings people to you or together. So look at, for example, when Ja'far in Aladdin put a spell on Jasmine to fall in love with him. Or when Ursula from The Little Mermaid put a spell on Eric to make him fall in love with her. So these were both spells that the magicians or the witches put on other people so that they love them. This is what a lot of sheikhs do to the people. That's why they give out rings and taweez and amulets and things like that. Because there's usually a jinn or a spell in them that keeps you loyal to that sheikh. And of course, not all sheikhs do this, and not all narcissistic sheikhs do this. But be careful when accepting gifts and rings and amulets from sheikhs. Okay? Don't accept them, and if you do, destroy them. An example of sarf magic that destroys people or keeps people apart, for example, if it was to cause a divorce or an illness and so on, in Disney would be like when Princess Elsa in Frozen turns everyone to ice. Okay, it causes everyone to be really upset with her and not like her. And you've got the witch in Snow White who gave her the poisoned apple to kill her. And then you have Sleeping Beauty when Maleficent put the curse on the princess so that on her 16th birthday she pricks her finger and then never wakes up from a coma. And then you have examples of atf with good intention, like the curse that was put on the prince in Beauty and the Beast. The witch turned him into a beast because of his cruel behaviour, and the spell could only be broken if the beast loved someone else and earned their love in return. So he had to do this before the enchanted rose lost all its petals. And you'll see that even the servants in the castle were turned into household objects. So this is something magicians really can do. This didn't come from imagination. This is something magic can actually do. And Disney also gives an example of witches approaching empathic individuals to help them. Okay, and it later backfires on them, like the Little Mermaid, when Ursula offered to turn her into a human so that she could marry a human prince and fulfill her dreams. But this backfired because she owed Ursula later. So when a magician does you a favour, you are forever indebted to that witch or that magician. And then you get the example of a nice witch who does something nice for someone empathic, like Cinderella, when the fairy godmother came and she turned her into a beautiful princess and she got to marry the prince because of the transformation and so on, right? So this doesn't happen. Okay, there is no such thing as good magic or magic as bad magic. But Disney educates children from a very young age about magic. And you'll notice it's in almost every single film. And if you trace its roots, it's back to this story of Sulaiman alayhi salam. So they make it appealing for children to have magical powers. Look how much they look up to figures like Harry Potter. It's seen as something inspirational to be a witch or a magician, and you can do whatever you like and cast whatever spells you like. Even teenage shows and films contain a lot of magic and stories of witches and magicians. And the whole purpose of it is to take you away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So think of Cinderella for a minute. The idea is that if it wasn't for the fairy godmother, the prince would never have seen her. And she never would have ended up marrying a prince as a woman who was just a servant in her stepmother's house. So there would have been no way for her to escape her stepmother and attend the ball in the castle for the prince to see her. So she would have remained as a servant for the rest of her life. Do you see what I mean? So they're like, yeah, the fairy godmother's better then, because she gave her an opportunity to marry a prince and be a somebody. So be careful with what your children watch, because this does program their minds to see magic and magicians and witches in a positive light. And when evil witches and magicians are presented in a powerful light, it can also cause people to aspire to be like them because of their confidence. Right? If you look at all the villains and witches and magicians in Disney, they're always the best dressed, they're always the most confident, they're always the most powerful, and a lot of people want to be like that. So being confident and powerful and have magic powers, show me how I can have a genie as a friend. And that's how it starts. That's how a lot of children start to wonder what it would be like to have a genie as a friend. And this might start quite innocent, but as you grow older and you start to understand that there are ways of commanding a jinn and having jinns at your service, then you can enter a very dangerous world that you may never escape from. So Sulaiman alayhi salam was the only one who had this power because he was the only one who was strong enough to handle it. So I hope that all makes sense. And I hope I haven't burst anyone's bubble or fantasy because you can't have a jinni friend. I know there are some of you who secretly want one just so you can click your fingers and your whole house is cleaned. Or you get the perfect body without having to sweat and go through pain in the gym and sacrifice your favourite food. Or escape your knock family and go and marry a really handsome prince out there. Yeah, trust me, we've all got that list. But unfortunately, it won't happen in this lifetime unless you're a billionaire. So we're just going to have to work hard and go to Jannah, inshallah, where we can have all of these things. Because we will have people at our service all the time who will always say, "My dear madam or sir, what will your pleasure be? Let me take your order, jot it down, you ain't never had a friend like me. Life is your restaurant and I'm your maitre d'. Come on, whisper what it is you want, you ain't never had a friend like me." I hope you've enjoyed the podcast, inshallah, and that you found the answers to the 101 questions interesting and beneficial. Please do hit that thumbs up if you liked it. I'm off for a much needed lie down now because that was seriously intense. Until the next podcast, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.